Have you ever stood at a port at 3 in the morning and watched a container ship slide in under the cranes? The Maersk colors, or the orange of Hapag-Lloyd, lit up by the terminal floods. The accommodation block at the stern, 6 or 7 decks tall, almost every porthole dark, just a couple of lights on the bridge wing and one down in the galley. Most people who see that ship, if they think about the crew at all, assume those men and women cannot wait to get off it. 9 months in a steel box, away from family, away from home, away from everything that makes life feel normal. So you would expect that the second the gangway hits the quay, they would be running for the airport. A lot of them are not. A lot of them are already quietly counting down the days until the next contract starts. Once you understand why, you will never look at a ship coming into port the same way again. Hi, my name is Jack, and this is Life at Sea, the channel where we get inside the lives of the people who actually live and work on the water. Now, before we get into this one, I want to be clear about who we are talking about today. We are not talking about a weekend on a yacht. We are not talking about a 2-week cruise contract or a short coastal supply run. We are talking about a deep sea officer or rating signing a 9-month rotation on a long-haul cargo or container vessel, somewhere in the Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, CMA, CGM, MSC, Stena, or Wallenius Wilhelmsen fleet, and then coming back 6 or 8 weeks later and doing it all over again. That is the person we are trying to understand here. The life of a long-haul deep-sea officer. The first thing that surprises people when they actually start meeting the men and women who do this is how ordinary the path usually looks. A modern deep-sea officer in the Maersk or Hapag-Lloyd world has almost always come up through a recognized institution. In the UK, that means Warsash Maritime School, or the City of Glasgow College, or one of the Merchant Navy cadet schemes still run through British operators and the Merchant Navy Training Board. In the United States, it is the Federal Academy at Kings Point, Massachusetts Maritime, SUNY Maritime, or the California state counterpart out in Vallejo. In Australia, it is the Australian Maritime College in Tasmania. In Canada, the Marine Institute in St. John's. In Scandinavia and the Netherlands, the Norwegian, Danish, and Dutch maritime academies feed officers into Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, Stena, and Wallenius Wilhelmsen through pipelines that have been running, in some cases, for over 100 years. You start as a cadet, usually somewhere between 17 and 19 years old. You sail your sea time. You sit your STCW certificates of competency, and you climb. Third officer, second officer, chief mate, master. The whole arc to a command on a deep-sea vessel typically takes 8 to 12 years if you stay on program. Most of the people who actually settle into the long rotation life are in their late 20s through their 50s, with a heavy concentration in their 30s and 40s, when the money is at its best and the body still tolerates the schedule. And here is something a lot of people do not realize. Shipping is an internationally crewed industry drawn from across the world, but the officer ranks on the major Western European, Scandinavian, and North American fleets are still dominated by people trained inside those same systems. A Maersk H-class running out of Algeciras might have a Danish master, a British chief mate, a German chief engineer, a Dutch second officer. On a Stena ferry out of Harwich, almost the entire bridge team will be British, Swedish, or Norwegian. On a Wallenius Wilhelmsen car carrier out of Southampton, the senior officers are typically Norwegian, Swedish, or British. There is a lineage to it, and the people who stay are usually people who grew up around the water, or whose father or grandfather did. What links them, almost without exception, is that they were never going to be happy at a desk. Most experienced chief mates will tell you plainly that the ones who last in this life are not so much running toward the sea as they are running away from the version of themselves that would have to sit in an office in Reading or Hamburg or Houston, in traffic twice a day, eating a sandwich at a screen. Honestly, when you put it like that, the maths starts to look very different. The picture you should have in your head is not a romantic figure on a clipper bow. It is a 38-year-old chief mate from Tyneside or Trondheim or Halifax on his 16th or 17th contract who genuinely prefers the bridge wing at 4 in the morning to anywhere else he could be on a Tuesday. What that 9 months actually looks like day to day, deck to deck. If you have never been on a modern deep-sea container ship, the accommodation block at the stern, what sailors call the deck house, is bigger than you would think. On a Maersk H-class, which carries over 15,000 TEU and runs 353 meters long, the deck house is 6 or 7 decks tall and houses something like 20 to 25 crew. The newer Maersk B-class, the methanol dual-fuel ships at over 17,000 TEU, are not far off the same in layout. The bridge sits up at the top. Below it, the master's day room and cabin, then the senior officers, then junior officers and ratings, then the mess decks, the galley, the ship's office, the laundry, the recreation lounge. Right at the bottom of the deck house are the cold stores and the air conditioning plant that feeds the whole block. Inside the cabin itself, the picture is more domestic than people imagine. Under the Maritime Labor Convention of 2006, which most of the world's fleet now runs under, officers on most modern deep-sea vessels are entitled to a single cabin with an attached bathroom. There is a bed, a desk, a chair, a wardrobe, a small fridge in some companies, a porthole if you are above the load line, and a blackout curtain across the porthole for when you are sleeping during the day. And one small detail you will see in every working cabin at sea is a lee board or lee rail fixed to the side of the bunk, mandated by the MLC on upper berths and standard on most singles as well. It is the strip of timber or padded board that stops you rolling out when the ship is taking a beam sea at 3 in the morning. Simple, effective, and incredibly powerful for how cheap it is to fit. Above the desk, in almost every officer's cabin you walk into, there is a photo wall. Kids on a beach, a wife in a garden, a dog, sometimes a sister ship in dry dock taped up next to family. The photographs are not decoration. They are the texture of 9 months of work. And the people who have done a few hitches put them up on the first day before they even unpack the kit bag. Now, here is where it gets interesting. The world inside the deck house is not the same across operators. A Maersk H-class cabin is a different feel from a Stena ferry cabin on the North Sea. And a Stena cabin is a different world again from the crew deck on a Carnival or Royal Caribbean cruise ship, where the accommodation runs deep below the waterline and the spaces are tighter. Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd tend to run a quiet, ordered Northern European ship. Stena tends to be tighter and more turnaround driven on its ferry routes. The Japanese liners, NYK, MOL, K-Line, are famously disciplined, almost military in the rhythm of the messes and the cleanliness of the alleyways. Most experienced chief engineers will tell you they could find their way around a sister ship cabin in the dark, because the same class layout repeats across the fleet, and the muscle memory of where the kettle goes, where the light switch is, where the boots live, comes back the moment they step through the door. And then there is the rhythm of the mess. On a deep-sea ship, the officer mess and the ratings mess are usually separate, with the same food coming out of the same galley, just plated differently and at slightly different times. Breakfast at 7, lunch at 12, dinner at 6. The cook posts the menu by hand on a board in the alleyway the night before. Coffee is always on. The mess room, in a working week at sea, is the closest thing to a town square that a ship has. The 4 to 8 watch comes in for their morning meal as the 8 to 12 is just finishing theirs, and the conversation that happens at that handoff, half about the ship, half about home, is genuinely the rhythm of the place. Now the real question, why 9 months? Why not 3? Why not stop? There are 3 answers, and most of the men and women who do this work will give you all 3 if you sit them down long enough. The first is the money, and the way the money actually works at sea. A British or Irish officer who spends a qualifying period of 365 days or more outside the UK, with at least one foreign port visit per tax year, can claim the seafarer's earnings deduction under HMRC help sheet rules. In practical terms, that means the entire seafaring income for the qualifying period is effectively zero rated for UK income tax. Norway runs its own seafarer tax allowance for crews on its NIS registered fleet. The United States has its foreign earned income exclusion. The Netherlands and Denmark have similar regimes built for their merchant fleets. The principle, across all of them, is the same. For a properly structured Western officer's contract, the gross is essentially the net. Now let us actually do the maths, because this is where it really starts to land. A senior officer or master on a major deep sea line, depending on operator and vessel, sits somewhere between $9,500 and $11,000 a month on board, with food, accommodation, and travel all covered by the company. A senior Maersk master, by industry reporting through Glassdoor, comes in at an estimated average of around $164,000 a year. Broader industry estimates for senior masters across the major Western fleets push that figure closer to $200,000 in a strong contract year. Now take that British master, working a qualifying 9-month rotation, clearing a 6-figure number, with no rent or mortgage costs eating into it during the contract, no commute, no childcare costs while he is away, and the SED means HMRC takes essentially none of it. Compare that against the same person ashore on a £100,000 salary, paying more than 40% marginal tax with London or Aberdeen rent stacked on top, and the gap is not small. The gap is enormous. The math is almost embarrassingly one-sided. The second answer is security and familiarity. The cabin you left in November is the cabin you walk back into in February. Your locker, your boots, your foul weather jacket on the same hook by the door. Your mug, with the specific chip in the rim, stowed in the cup holder above the desk where you left it. Any old chief engineer who has done a few hitches knows exactly what that feels like. The small, quiet relief of stepping back into a space that has not moved. Shore life is full of moving parts you have to manage. Ship life, once you are on it, has fewer of them, and the ones it has, you already know. The third answer is the work itself, and the identity it gives you. Any veteran master will tell you plainly that running a Triple E or an H class through a North Atlantic depression with a bridge team that is properly dialed in is one of the most satisfying things a person can do for a living. It is genuinely skilled. It is genuinely respected within the community. And once you have done it for a few years, the alternative, sitting at a screen in an office park, stops looking like a real option at all. There is also the autonomy piece, which people on shore underestimate. A master on a deep sea vessel, once the ship is at sea and the passage plan is signed off, runs his own world. There is no middle manager in the next office. There is no Slack channel pinging at 9:30 on a Friday night. The chain of command exists. The company is on the satellite. The charterers are watching the AIS, but the day-to-day decisions on the bridge belong to the people standing on it. For a certain kind of person, that is genuinely the thing they cannot give up. Now look, this would not be a Life at Sea video if we were not completely straight with you about both sides of this. So let's be honest. 9 months is a long time, and the cost is real, and the seafaring community knows it better than anyone. The mental health picture first. The Yale University and ITF Seafarers Trust Study, one of the largest of its kind, found that around 25% of seafarers reported symptoms of anxiety or depression, and around 20% reported some level of suicidal ideation. The same study flagged that container ship crews showed the highest rates of suicidal ideation across all vessel types. Liverpool-based research drawing on World Health Organization data has long ranked seafaring as one of the professions with the highest suicide rates in the world. Industry insurance analyses have placed roughly 11 to 13% of seafarer fatalities in the suicide category, with the true number probably higher when disappearances at sea are factored in. These are not small numbers, and they are not numbers anyone serious in the industry tries to hide. The family cost is the other side of the same coin. Most experienced chief mates will tell you that the hardest part of the job is not the storm. It is the WhatsApp video call where your daughter, 3 months into the contract, does not recognize your voice for a second. The marriages that do not survive the rotation. The birthdays missed. The funerals watched on a phone screen from a berth in Singapore. Any old bosun who has done a full 9-month hitch will tell you he knows exactly what the 3rd month feels like in the chest. That flat, low-grade ache the work pushes through but does not actually fix. The body takes a hit as well. The 4 on, 8 off watch rotation, which is the standard for deck officers on most deep-sea vessels, chief mate on the 4 to 8 watch, second mate on the 12 to 4 watch, third mate on the 8 to 12 watch, means you are never sleeping a full unbroken night. Add the gym being a small room next to the engine spaces, the food being whatever the cook can do with 9 months of stores, and the body knows. Sleep. And then there is shore leave, which is essentially gone. In the 1970s tanker era, a port call meant 3 or 4 days alongside and a proper run into town. Today, according to the Mission to Seafarers, a 21,000 TEU container ship can turn around in about 8 hours, and most of that time the crew is either working cargo, attending agencies, or trying to sleep. The Maritime Labor Convention of 2006 raised the floor on accommodation and contract conditions, and any pre-MLC veteran will tell you the difference is real. But it did not bring back shore leave. The one genuine recent improvement is Starlink Maritime, which from around 2023 onward has been bolted to Monkey Islands across the world fleet, and which most masters will tell you has done more for crew morale than anything in the last 20 years. Before Starlink, a crew member might wait 2 weeks for a port call to call home. Now the call is on the desk in the cabin, after the watch, every night. Which, when you think about what that means for a parent at sea, is genuinely one of the most important changes the modern industry has made. So, pull it all together. A deep sea officer choosing a 9-month rotation is not a person serving a sentence. He is a person who has done the maths, on the money, on the identity, on the alternative shore life he would have to walk back into, and concluded with full information that the ship is the better deal. The cost is real. The isolation is real. The family strain is real. And any honest seafarer will tell you so before you have to ask. But for a certain kind of person, and the entire industry runs on that kind of person, the cabin with the lee rail, and the photo wall, and the chipped mug above the desk, is genuinely the place that makes more sense than the alternative. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Life at Sea for a lot more content just like this one. And if you have ever done a contract or known someone who did, even just a season on a ferry or a stretch on a tug, drop it in the comments below. I would genuinely love to hear it. Thanks for watching.